London is home to a record-breaking 9 million people today. But the big surge happened during Queen Victoria's reign. In 70 years, London expanded by over 5 million. This vast tide of humanity was housed in hovels, mansions, terraces and palaces, but mostly in the drab monotony of speculative building. This is the story of how the arts and crafts movement changed all of that. In 1871, Prime Minister Gladstone attended a banquet, the opening of the District Railway. This was an engineering triumph, cutting edge, the Elizabeth line of its day. Thousands of houses sprang up around these stations, housing of the same sort everywhere. Bedford Park was founded in 1875 by Jonathan Carr. He bought 24 acres in leafy Turnham Green. He was a speculative builder with an edge. The edge was his strong connections in artistic circles. His brother was an art critic and his sister was a painter. He had the ear of Edward Godwin. He was in the forefront of a design movement known as arts and crafts. Godwin designed for Oscar Wilde and was a lover of Ellen Terry, an acting A-lister of the time. Carr said he wanted plans of houses a gentleman would be glad to live in, but the extreme cost of a detached house should be £700. Godwin was forced to cut corners, and only a few houses were built before Carr became more ambitious. The object of that ambition was Richard Norman Shaw, just elevated to the Royal Academy. Shaw was another arts and crafts man and a fan of Queen Anne's style, relying on bricks, tiles, woodwork arranged in rustic harmony. Carr conceived the idea of creating a community for artists and the aesthetic middle class, a sort of New Chelsea for those who could not quite afford to live in town. Shaw designed the landmark buildings of the new estate: St Michael's Church, the local pub, and the general stores. And he attracted other fashionable architects. The Art School by Maurice Adams. In marked contrast to later suburbs like Hampstead, where pubs were outlawed, the Tabard became a favoured haunt of the artistic class, rather like a fashionable Chelsea hostelry. By 1883, 490 houses were built, and Bedford Park attracted a mixture of artists, actors, poets, and revolutionaries. The club was popular. You could play billiards, use the library, attend lectures. Amateur dramatics was competitive and popular. Over 200 would assemble for the annual dinner. Naturally, Carr would ask Shaw to design his house as well, the Tower House. Like many of his era, his speculation ended badly, and his bankruptcy forced him to sell it in 1908. Moncure Conway was a central campaigner in the American Civil War. His wife Ellen had a house built for them in the Avenue. His lasting monument is Conway Hall in London. 8 Woodstock Road became home to the Yeats family. John Butler Yeats, the artist, and his son, W.B. Yeats. They soon moved to Blenheim Road. It was here that he first met Maude Gonne, the Irish revolutionary. She refused his frequent proposals of marriage, saying it would ruin his poetry. She may have had a point. Up the road from Yeats, Mary Cecil Hay lived in this Shaw terrace. She specialised in the racier side of English literature. They're still available in paperback today. This striking house was the home of artist M Rooke. He was associated with the fashionable painter Edward Burne-Jones. Many artists lived in the park. Probably the most famous was Camille Pissarro. He lived briefly at 62 Bath Road, next to the railway line. His son Lucian lived with him before moving to Hammersmith in the early 1900s. This was painted from his terrace. And this beautiful Shaw house was painted from his garden. His wife and daughter are in the foreground. Artists painted their living rooms, landscapes, and the streets around them. The 1901 census shows Queen Anne's Grove positively littered with artists. And even a popular newspaper editor. Bedford Park was also home to the Russian anarchist Sergey Stepniak. He'd assassinated the Tsar's chief of police. He now lives in leafy Blandford Road. Until one morning in December 1895, Stepniak strolled towards Woodstock Road Station. No one could explain how he disappeared beneath the wheels of a plodding saddle tank engine. The inquest returned a verdict of accidental death. This minimalist cottage was designed by one of the high priests of the arts and crafts movement, Charles Voysey, for an artist, W Forster. It cost less than £500. The Edwardian era was kind to the people of Bedford Park. It remained home to the well-off. Successful businessmen like Percy Warneford Davis, the billiard ball king, lived in this Norman Shaw house. But all was to change. In the brief period of peace before the Second World War, the suburb declined. The Depression took its toll. Carr's Tower House became a school. And then the bulldozers moved in. There was only one exceptional house built as the storm clouds gathered in Europe. On the 23rd of August 1944, a flying bomb crossed the city, spluttering and stalling over Hammersmith. At 8:32 a.m, Adams Art School received a direct hit. After the war, the suburb accelerated its decay. Pebble dash everywhere. houses were divided into flats. Pretty houses had modern extensions. In 1963, a large house at 13 Bedford Road was replaced by this bright yellow block of flats. Enough was enough. Long before social media was invented, a campaign was started by local residents. Tom Greeves was a co-founder of the Bedford Park Society and led the charge. John Betjeman, an establishment heavyweight, entered the fray, and the first garden suburb was protected through a Grade 2 listing of 356 houses in 1967. This green plaque commemorates Tom Greeves. Over the last 150 years, Bedford Park has turned full circle. From a cutting-edge artistic colony, through decline, through rebirth, and now as close to Carr's founding ideas as ever.